All right, so good evening, distinguished members of Hermage, and welcome to a very special night. It's our Ethics Relaunch, a very important event in our celebration of HR Week. I want to wish you all a happy HR Week. I trust we are mid the week of celebrations, and I trust your organizations have been acknowledging you. And tomorrow being HR Day, we expect exciting things as we go out in our red in our celebration of our 40th year. So our ethics relaunch tonight, we will have a panel discussion, a roundtable talk with our directors, and I will introduce them one by one and then ask them just to say hello as they're introduced. And then we will go straight into the panel discussions. Our format will be a question section where I will pose directly to the panel, and then thereafter, we will open the floor for questions and answers. Okay, so I will start with our very own President Loy Walters. 25 years ago, Loy began her journey in the field of human resources in various public sector entities, inclusive of Ministries of Education and Health, Jamaica Customs and Office of the Services Commission. Over the years, she managed portfolios such as Director of Manpower Planning, Director HRM&D, and Senior Deputy Chief Personnel Officer. Presently, she is the Principal Director, Human Resource Policy and Information in the Strategic Human Resource Management Division at the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service. Mrs. Walters is the first female president of Human Resource Management Association of Jamaica and is a HR subcommittee member of the CLA. She was a board member of Tax Administration of Jamaica, TAJ, chair of its HR subcommittee, as well as a member of the UWI Career and Placement Committee. She's a certified PROSCI change practitioner and a trainer of trainers. Her areas of expertise include HR policy development, HRM&D, leadership development, team building, customer service, and professionalism. Academically, she holds a bachelor's degree in literatures in English, a master's degree in human resource development, and a postgraduate diploma in public sector senior management. Professionally, she has pursued a number of programs such as the GOJ's Sector Senior Leadership Development Program, the Advanced Inter-American Policy and Innovation Management Program at Georgetown University, and the Commonwealth Executive Program in Public Management at the Shirley School of Business, York University. Welcome our President, Loy Walters.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you, President Loy. I'd like to now introduce you to VP Michael McAnuff-Jones. Michael is a graduate of Knox College and Knox Community College. He completed undergraduate studies in banking and finance at CAST, now University of Technology, Jamaica. He also holds a master's degree as follows: MSc in Social Sciences, Human Resources from the University of Leicester, and MBA distinction from the University of Wales. He has also completed the professional designations and certification programs in banking, corporate secretarial practice, and human resources, and holds associateship in the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators, the Chartered Institute of Bankers, and designated as a senior professional in human resources, SPHR, by the Human Resource Certification Institute. Michael spent several years in banking, during which he held several key roles across the Scotiabank Group, including accounting manager, assistant general manager, operations, assistant general manager HR, senior vice president HR Scotia Group Jamaica, Belize, and Haiti, and more recently, regional head of human resources for the Scotiabank English Caribbean operations. He retired from Scotiabank in January 2017 and is currently engaged in part-time HR consulting and pastoral ministry. Please welcome VP Michael McAnuff-Jones. VP Michael, we're not hearing you.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I was muted. Thank you.
Okay.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
Great. All right. I'd like to introduce Dr. Dayton Robinson, our third panelist. He's the Assistant Vice President, Group Human Resources for the Victoria Mutual Group and Associated Lecturer at the University of the West Indies. He spent the last 18 years in the field of human resource management, working in the food and beverage, bauxite, and financial industries. He's a highly competent HR practitioner with demonstrated skills in the areas of leadership, employee engagement, total rewards, industrial relations, succession planning, strategic HRM planning, and change management. He currently sits on the board of Hermage and is current deputy chairman of the Jamaica Institute of Financial Services. He also completed other certifications such as Certified Public Accountant, CPA, Senior Professional in Human Resources, SPHR, and Senior Certified Professional, CHRM, SCP, from SHRM and Proxy Change Management. Welcome, Director Dayton Robinson.
Thank you.
All right. And our fourth panelist, who is Director Loy Parks. All right. Director Loy Parks is currently the Leadership Development and Institutional Strengthening Specialist with the Caribbean Center for Development Administration, CARICAD, since August 2019. Prior to that, she was engaged as a regional project manager for the very successful Caribbean Leadership Project for 3 years. She has served for over 20 years in the public service in Jamaica in varying capacities in the Office of the Prime Minister, the Office of the Cabinet, and the Office of the Services Commission. Some of the key positions she has held include that of Chief Technical Director with responsibility for the development of strategic HR, capacity of the public sector, and Chief Personnel Officer in the Office of the Services Commission, where she had overall responsibility for providing leadership to the Office of the Services Commission to ensure the provision of quality policy advice to the Police, Public, Judicial, Municipal, and Parish Council Services Commission in relation to appointments, training, discipline, and retirement of employees in the public service, the Jamaica Constabulary Force, and the local authorities of the judiciary. She's a graduate of the University of the West Indies, where she earned the MSc in Human Resource Development with distinction and the first cohort of the Caribbean Leadership Project. Welcome, VP Loy Parks.
Good night, everyone. Happy to be here.
All right, so that completes our 4 panelists. Now, members, I know you know our directors very well, but I felt inclined to go through their profiles so that it could resonate how competent this body is to speak about this relaunch on ethics and professional conduct for a distinguished session. So I wanted to just refresh your memory as to their accolades and accomplishments as we go through the code. Now, I trust everyone by now has their poster with the Code of Ethical and Professional Conduct, which has been shared by Hermage Secretariat. It would be a good point of reference for you as we go through tonight's questions, and also so that you immerse yourself in, it's a robust document with a lot of information, and we want all of our professionals to fully understand it. All right, now it's a relaunch, which would suggest that there was a code in place, which was around 2010. We have improved this, and now here we are in 2020 having the relaunch. So President Loy Walters, what is the motivation behind the relaunch of the Code of Ethical and Professional Conduct?
Good night again, everyone. Thanks for coming. And tonight's launch, the present code that we have was launched in an era where the focus was more on rules and procedures. And so the board took a decision to do a cultural shift, to shift from a more reactive procedural base to loaded code to a more proactive values-based code. Because we are seeking to create in organizations shared and consistent cultures. You find that you can't have a rule for everything. And when you focus on rules, then you find that it doesn't work. And so we thought that we would simplify the code, clarify the areas, use more inclusive language, make it more friendly to our HR leaders in terms of its look, in terms of its content. And so we wanted this new code that we are launching tonight, or relaunching tonight, we want to focus on building business, developing people, fostering better workplaces, and optimizing the contribution of human capital.
Thank you, President Loy. What are the pillars of the code? Director Loy Parks?
Yes. So the code has 4 pillars, and they are as follows: professional competence and behavior, ethical standards and integrity, representative of the profession, and lastly, stewardship. Now, the code is really aimed at guiding the work and conduct of all HR professionals across all industries, all sectors. But we're also hoping that it will have a broad application everywhere that people are managed and everywhere that we have managers of human resources. And so to this end, as an organization, Hermage is aiming to work with our partners, several of whom we have a memorandum of understanding with, such as the public sector, for example, to get support for the use and application of this code. So ultimately, what we're aiming for is that we want to establish a register of HR professionals. And we intend to then lobby employers through their representative organization to endorse the establishment and use of this register of HR professionals. And then it is from that vantage point then that we can advance to ensure the application of the code to all registered HR professionals, and not only to members of Hermage.
Director Loy, on that point of the register, can you explain what this register means and how one gets onto the register?
Well, the register is not yet established, but one of the things we're trying to ensure is the continued professionalization of HR. It is a profession. And so the aim then is to get to a place where we have standards, perhaps professional development standards, training standards that members then have to meet in order to be considered truly a professional according to these common standards. And so with that, we will boost our profession, the status of our profession. We will then be able to also self-regulate as HR professionals, similar to how other professions do it, such as the Medical Doctors Association or the Bar Association, in order that we raise the profile of the HR professional. We understand that we're not just people who operate in a fly-by-night kind of fashion, that we have a rigorous educational and experiential basis from which we add value to organizations as strategic business partners.
Okay. So it would be saying then to the public and to organizations that if an HR professional is on this register, this means they've satisfied all the standards of professional conduct and ethics in this field.
Exactly. So it is a way to brand our profession further, and it really raises the profile, and it says that, look, when you hire somebody who's from this register, you are getting quality.
Right. All right. The code speaks to building businesses. How does the professional competence and behaviors pillar help Hermage to deliver on this commitment? VP Michael?
I take that, Melissa. And this is an important element of the overall code. There are people who still have the view that the HR professional's role is to organize Christmas parties and fun days, believe it or not. But one of the things we've been very clear on and have been attempting to emphasize over many years is that the HR leader is a legitimate part of the executive management of a company. I've been attempting to convince HR professionals who may have been shell-shocked over many years around this notion that their job is to plan Christmas parties. We've convinced them that, you know what, this is where your place is. And you have a role, a very difficult role, because you have to be an employee advocate, but you also have to be an executive with responsibility, with shared responsibility for running the business. So from where we sit at Hermage, one of the things we're very clearly persuaded um, of is the need for people who are HR professionals who are going to be part of the management of companies to be functionally skilled in all the HR areas, employee engagement, labor relations, employee communication, compensation and awards management, staffing and recruitment, you name them. As a matter of fact, that even includes HR technology, yes? And we're very clear that HR leaders must be skilled in these functional areas, but these functional areas are not in themselves, they're not ends in themselves. They exist as part of the toolkit of the HR leader to deliver support to business and to deliver on employee advocacy. The HR leader is the only person who sits at the executive table who has both an employee advocate role and an executive role supporting the business. So from where we sit, the need for this professional competence and behavior element of the code cannot be overemphasized, because embedded in this ask is that HR professionals understand HR functionally and are able to deploy their functional understanding to support the business, and that they understand the business and are then able to interpret the business's needs in relationship to the functional imperatives that HR demands. So what this calls for is for the HR professional to blend functional understanding, functional experience with business knowledge, yes, which then sees them providing leading metrics, historical metrics, metrics that are interpretive, that can provide opportunity for the business to understand, you know, what will happen to a marginal increase in expense costs, what will happen to the revenues, what if you were to deliver a different mix of compensation, how would that marginally move the revenues, you know, what's the data saying, for example, in terms of employee viewpoints, what's the correlation between what employees think and productivity and customer service delivery and so on. So it's blending functional experience and understanding in HR with knowledge of the business, providing accurate information to the business to enable the business to make better decisions. There has been consistent research that has shown that 60% of the factors that control and determine market capitalization in listed companies are all factors that are within the control and the direct influence of the HR leader. So this is very critical for us, because we want to make it clear that whether it includes employee development, strategies for driving employee engagement that will have direct impact on discretionary effort and therefore the results of the business, or it has simply to do with how we communicate with employees, yes, to ensure that their productivity is not diluted by wrong behaviors, or whether it has to do with how we respond to ethical issues that can actually create further problems in the company and become a runaway train in how people behave. At the end of the day, this element of the code brings together functional understanding and experience with business knowledge to ensure that the HR professional is not simply a planner of Christmas parties and fun days.
Thank you, VP Michael. So what I'm getting also from this particular pillar is that there is an onus on HR professionals in order to stay relevant, to also be ahead in terms of their learning, their personal learning and development. You can't stay fixed in one field or a source of knowledge. You have to stretch out and build your competencies so you can take the organizations to the next level.
Sure, and by this code, one of the things we're doing here, we're not just speaking to the HR professionals, we're speaking to employers, and we're speaking to other employees. We want people who are involved in the business today to see the value of the experience they have, yes, to a career in HR. So if you're a finance professional or an operations professional or any other kind of professional, we want you to see that HR beckons you, yeah, to bring your skills to bear upon the practice of HR, because HR is not simply people who have just grown up in payroll, but HR requires people with experience in the business. And people who don't have an experience in the business, one of the things we're committed to is holding up before people the opportunity to be better HR leaders by getting experience in the business through lateral transfers and so on.
Right. Thank you, VP Michael. Now, the code also speaks to building businesses, but also the development of people. How does the pillar of ethical standards and integrity now support the achievement of this?
That's me, Mel?
Yes, Director Dayton, thank you.
Okay. Good night, everybody. Happy to be here, and I'm very happy to be answering that question for you, Melissa. So let me just connect the dots quickly. So let's assume for a moment that each organization has stated values that becomes the price of admission for all employees. In other words, if a team member don't possess those values, then the organization don't want you to be a part of that organization. So these values are very critical to the business, right? So from these values flows the organization's code of conduct or business ethics, which clearly states how a employee should behave when conducting the affairs of the organization. So this will then eventually forms the basis for the foundation for the kind of culture that an organization needs in order to grow, in order to execute on its growth strategy. So if culture is important to this, then who are responsible for facilitating that culture in the organization? HR leaders are responsible for the development of policies and procedures that supports that kind of culture, a culture that is based on ethics and integrity. So this should therefore be evident in how we onboard employees. It should be evident in how we engage employees. It should be evident in how we develop our employees, and for sure it should be evident in how we reward our team members. It should also be evident in how we communicate these policies and procedures, or diversity blueprint, free of discrimination, that kind of thing. It should be evident in all of this. And think about it. If it is done correctly, employees will more likely be engaged. And if they're more engaged, they're more likely to be productive. And if they are more productive, then the organization is more likely to be profitable and to achieve its growth agenda, if you really think about it that way. So let's quickly look at the flip side of it and just use a quick example. An example that maybe everybody know about, right? Let's talk about a quick example. Look at Enron, right? Enron is a typical case. Let's look at Enron. Enron is a giant oil company in Texas. The creme de la creme works there, right? These guys showboat. You know them by the cars they drive and how they dress, okay? But many reports would suggest that the demise of Enron was due to misappropriations of funds or fraudulent activities by executives, right? Which apparently was part of an ongoing unethical culture. But but these reports are also very silent as to HR's role in creating such a culture where top executives can continue with unethical behavior. I'm not saying that HR by himself could stop it, because that would require senior management support as well. But I'm saying HR's role is simply to put policies and procedures in place that are ethical and can stand up to scrutiny, which is what this pillar is all about. And if that is the case, it therefore means that our HR leaders must also be measured by ethical standards in order for them to execute on this function credibly.
Thank you, Director Dayton. So this pillar would then treat things like cronyism and nepotism because it speaks about fair recruitment practices, as you mentioned, the onboarding.
Sure.
In this pillar is where the HR professional will be guided against malpractices like that.
Right. And not also to be guided, but to continuously improve on these policies and procedures as new regulations come out to ensure that the organization continues to be ethical.
Right. All right. Thank you. Now,
Sure.
as I said, it is focused on ensuring that its approach demonstrates commitment to corporate social responsibility. How will the pillar of representative of the profession help Hermage as an organization and through its members to deliver on the commitment of corporate social responsibility? Director Lloyd?
Thank you so much. Now, when we talk about corporate social responsibility, it's important to recognize that we cannot be operating businesses on the basis of we are only concerned with shareholder value, the bottom line, the profits and losses. We have to understand, and increasingly the research is showing that corporate social responsibility is important, not only as a societal good that is needed, but also that corporate social responsibility is good for business. And there are lots of academic studies that I have read, I've seen, where there's a lot of correlation between good corporate social responsibility practices and heightened employee morale, leading to, greater things like team dynamics and productivity as well. And so this particular pillar, representative of the profession, it is really speaking to the fact that this code will help facilitate, advocate for HR professionals to uphold their responsibilities, their corporate social responsibilities to the wider community of which they are part of, and for them to be role models at the highest level of ethical conduct, wherever they find themselves. Doesn't matter whether you're in private sector, public sector, NGO, educational institution, community-based organizations. Let me tell you something. I've always said this, that if HR, if any other, well, you want all persons to be ethical, but HR has to lead the way. If HR is unethical, it's as if it's double worse, and its impact is far more far-reaching and damaging. And so really what we're aiming for is to promote through our training, through our members' engagement, and through these standards, these ethical standards, to ensure that our HR professionals, they're above reproach, above critique, and that they are committed to and add value to this business of corporate social responsibility.
Thank you, Director Lloyd. Okay, so optimizing the contribution of human capital is a focus. How will the pillar of stewardship help you to achieve this goal? President Lloyd?
Well, stewardship is about ethical leadership. As HR leaders, we have to lead. We are leading in this new normal as the coronavirus has shown us. Persons are looking to us for that kind of leadership. And so, before, persons might say, oh, sometimes we sit at the table, sometimes we are in the C-suite, Michael, sometimes we are not. But now, with this new crisis, we are front and center. What is HR doing? Persons are texting us. What happened to the work from home policies? Persons are saying, what happened to the onboarding? How are you treating this? Now, all of a sudden, HR is front and center. We knew it, but now part of stewardship is that we have to now say, we are going to lead ethically. We are going to call out unethical behavior. We have to be willing to be whistleblowers too. Willing to call out unethical behavior in organizations and communicating that ethical leadership throughout the organization. And we can only do this when we demonstrate and promote fair and reasonable standards in how we treat people. HR has to treat people like kings and queens. We can't treat people like dirt, you know? And so how people who are within our sphere of influence, they must say, HR has my back. HR has got this in how we do people management, in how we do development practices in order to achieve the organizational objectives. So we have to ensure that we are the leaders when it comes to ethics. Do we have ethical officers, compliance officers, people who, you know, even if we have to twin those roles because we might not have, you know, that leverage to have a separate person, how do we deal with it? But ethical leadership has to be what we are, and that's how we become stewards in the organization.
Thank you, President Loy. Now, I'm glad that you brought in the COVID-19 element, because this new normal that we're experiencing, it was always the strategic leader. We were always, you know, needed to be depended on, but I think it's become a more apparent, I think, to everyone with this new normal. So this pillar of stewardship, how do you see its application or importance in this new normal that we're experiencing?
Well, in this new normal, we are the stewards, right? So persons come to us. They come to us for guidance. They lean on us. So our partners, our associates, or our members call on Hermage from time to time to say, how can you walk with us when we are on this committee? How can you help us to manage this area? How can we reach out? Because what persons may not realize is that every person is an HR manager. Even if you only manage yourself, you're a human resource. You are the most valuable resource in the organization. Do you realize that a machine cannot catch COVID? A machine can stop. It cannot work. It can stop working. But people are the ones that catch COVID. And so we have to be that kind of steward to say, how do we treat persons? You know, Dayton spoke to the issue of the values and the culture of the organization. We are the stewards of that kind of culture, ensuring that ethics becomes the foundation so that we don't repeat the mistakes that persons have made in the past.
Thank you, President Loy.
Sure.
Now we have the code, which seems to treat very well all these important areas. What are some of the ethical challenges that organizations are facing today that this code, I think, will treat?
Let me take that, Melissa. I mean, I do think that, you know, there has been a debate. I mean, when you look at the literature on this matter, there is a debate on what constitutes unethical behavior. So for example, there is what people call pro-organizational ethical behavior, unethical behavior, which is actions that people take which are intended to promote the effective operation of the organization, but which breach societal norms and values. So people are intending to do things for the organization, but in doing so, they are breaching all kinds of societal norms and ethics, and are perhaps even breaching company codes. So you know, so people refer, some researchers refer to that as pro-organizational unethical behavior. But you know, I think it's important for Hermage to talk about some of the things that have been more visible. So Dayton spoke about Enron, which involved really the misreporting of profits and losses. Enron was involved in that. There was a Fannie Mae mortgage scandal and the subprime loans in the United States. There was a sexual misconduct issues at Oxfam and the Me Too movement. There was a manipulation of interest rates in the international financial markets. There's a very important interest rate that bankers know called the London Interbank Offered Rate, LIBOR. So there was a LIBOR scandal, which involved the manipulation of interest rates by reputable financial institutions. There was the issue with diesel emissions related to Volkswagen. There was a mis-selling of insurance, property insurance, and there was a non-compliance with safety standards by British Petroleum and Halliburton Deepwater Horizon company, there was this substandard healthcare issue, and there was tax evasion. You remember the famous Panama Papers. So these have been more visible international ethics issues with unethical behavior. But we've seen it in our own country, where some of these same things have popped up, where people practice pro-organizational behavior that is unethical. We've seen where people have turned a blind eye to things that they ought not to have, where people have breached a code of conduct by not reporting incidents that they became aware of, by people signing off on transactions that they ought not to have signed off on, simply because they were told, where recruitment undermines the very policy that companies have committed to holding up and making applicable to other people. There is the disclosure of confidential information that has happened several times in our own country, and of course there to physical harassment, to sexual harassment, and to threats upon people's lives in our own country. So there's a range of things that, depending on the organization, which companies face. But I think it is important that we say at Hermitage that, although some people have the view that organizational deviance is not an issue of ethics, we take the view as an association that ethical behavior, whether it is a breach of organizational codes or a breach of societal codes, they're all, we regard all of them as unethical behaviors and are targets for our code of ethics for professional practice. I hasten to say though that, there's a bit of research from a sister organization in the United Kingdom, which has established that the reasons for unethical behavior are complex. For example, the Chartered Institute of Personal Development, which is our equivalent organization in the UK, found in their research that frustrated employees may be more likely to act unethically.